An epidemic has come to the world, and the guy decides to go to the village as a doctor, but it turns out that he is a relative of Johnny Sins and will do something there. And there is no need to imagine this, because today's story is about it. We see how the main character is riding on the subway. He is watching the news on the phone in order to find out what new film Dwayne Johnson starred in. But then he comes across a news item from the head of the Mermaid Village Health Center, which says that they need workers. The doors of the train open. All the people begin to crowd around the exit. The dark-haired man is squeezed from all sides. Now he is trapped by the Joker. After a while, he still emerges from this crowd. This victory was not easy. It makes the guy think that it's time to buy a car. He goes to his place of work. It turns out he works in a hospital. After arriving, he is immediately met by a colleague who gives him a certificate of transfer to another clinic. It turns out he was redirected to that very village of mermaids. He was going to his new place of work, but apparently a new colleague was on the bus. Suddenly, a lady gets out of the transport. She is as beautiful as Barbie. She is surprised that she was still able to get there after 6.5 hours. She sees how the main character is suffocating from lack of air. She is interested in his condition. He says that he is a crybaby, but the lady strokes him on the back and everything goes away. These two were indeed colleagues. They began to set off further on their journey. It turns out that the redhead was not even transferred to this place, but she arrived just like that. The guy had to work in this village for a year, but he was still grateful to his girlfriend, because if she hadn't been there, he would have been very bored. The dark-haired man takes the Barbie, whose name is Subin, to her new place of residence. She thanks the guy for his care, a real gosling. Afterwards, he walks to his house, in which he will live for 1 year. He enters it, but at first he sees no one. But after a few seconds, he begins to hear strange sounds. He understands that the sounds are coming from the room. He approaches her door and begins to look inside with his diamond eye. He sees the most beautiful landscapes. In this room, there was a dark-haired housewife and some man who was helping to clean the dirty pipe of this house. And this and other manhwa you can read on the free platform Manga 18H, where you will find any comic from our video. I'm happy to tell you that the site is completely ad-free. Click on the pinned comment below this video and enjoy, and we'll move on to our retelling. But instead of leaving them alone, the guy enters the room showing his negative IQ, but instantly slips. This scares everyone. After some time, the main character and the hostess stand in the corridor, who has not shown herself to be at her best. While they were talking, the dark-haired man kept looking at the 2 hills that were the decoration of the current place. The lady begins to give a tour of the house. She shows the doctor's room. He got the best room of all. Afterwards, she advises him to take a walk around the area, because the weather is great and he hasn't seen anything in the area, so it's time for surprises. The boy listened to the advice and went for a walk. He looks at everything but thinks about the hostess who could not get out of his head. During his walk, he notices some kind of ball that was floating on the surface of the water. He recognized it from a documentary film. A few seconds later, a lady diver emerges and begins to emerge from the water. She was very beautiful, especially in a suit. The girl began to take off her suit, as she had already come to the surface. The guy did not expect this at all because he could see everything, but she didn't care about it. The hero turned into stone but forgot to hide the gun that was sticking out of his pocket. After taking off the suit, the brunette notices the doctor, who stood like a statue. This makes her very scared. She demanded an explanation. The hero explained that he had been standing here even before she came ashore. Then the lady realized that she was to blame in this case and apologized. Then she decided not to show off her melons and put back on the suit in which she swam underwater. But the cunning boy, he had already seen everything. Afterwards, they began to communicate again, but the conversation was very short because her family, who apparently were friends with Neptune, came to pick up the lady. The brunette has almost left, but the hero calls out to her and says that she forgot her ball. She throws it on her back, but slips and falls into the sea. The boy realized that something was wrong, and at that time the grandmother stood by the shore and chilled, waiting for the student to surface. He began to take off his shoes, after which he immediately jumped down to save the princess. The old women were surprised at this. A moment later, he finds a lady who was falling down. Like a professional swimmer, he began to swim up to her, after which he grabbed her. The guy began to rise to the surface, and in his arms was a lady. Grandmothers from the shore screamed and supported the morale of Dwayne Johnson. After which, the main character put the girl on the ground. The lady was unconscious. Since he is a doctor, he understood that artificial respiration needed to be done. But at first, he was not thinking about saving the lady, but he understands that if he does not save her, he will be an enemy of the people. He began to work. After a few pushes on the plexus, the lady throws out the water that had accumulated in her. The hero was pleased that he saved the man. The old women began to thank the hero. The lady realized that it was he who saved her life and canceled the trip to the divine land. She understood what the Parasha was doing while she was passed out. This tensed the rescuer, He blushed and decided to leave this place, but he was quickly stopped by one of the old women. They gave him the address of the store where they work. They say goodbye, but the dark-haired one notices that the rescued one is looking at him with kindness in her eyes. He is surprised by such an event. In the evening, the doctor lies on his bed. He is very tired, thinking about everything that happened during the first day. He could not forget the brunette. He turned on his side, trying to fall asleep and stop remembering everything that happened to him today. This helped him, and he fell asleep. The next day, he leaves his room and goes to the kitchen. Dr. Strange is noticed by the hostess. After what he saw, he could not look her in the eyes. He wanted to leave quickly, but he saw that there was very tasty food on the table. He could not leave, because before he lived alone and ate only in the hospital. The hero accidentally choked on his food. The girl wanted to give the guy some soup to wash it down, but she leaned against him and gave him a new reason for blushing instead of soup. He notices the soldier's combat readiness. He quickly hides it. He cannot withstand all the pressure and runs away from home. At work, he measures the temperature of clients together with his girlfriend. After work, they are very tired because the work is not easy. The friends decide to go to a bar and drink a German drink, but on the way, the dark-haired man sees the same girl diver. He notices that she has injured her leg. He calls out to her, but the brunette does not hear him. Then the hero says that he will drink at the bar another time and apologizes to his red-haired friend. The doctor runs up to the lady like an assassin, which scares her, and she slips again and begins to fall. But the guy offers his heroic hand. He says that he called her, but she did not respond. Then the lady says that she can block all extraneous sounds in her head. It was strange. Then a true gentleman begins to become interested in the wound on his leg. He wants to examine it and draw the necessary conclusions. The dark-haired man, after his professional analysis, says that the wound is not serious, but still calls her to a place where he could heal her. They come to some place where Strange begins to treat the wound. He applies a rag on which the treatment is located to his leg. He couldn't concentrate. The client noticed this. She thought it was because of her talking, but in fact it was because of her unusual sounds. After some time, the acquaintances say goodbye. The lady thanks the paramedic. The brunette is almost gone. But the hero calls out to her and asks her name. We find out that her name is Cha Hye-yeon. She is 23 years old and she is a trainee. And the main character's name is Hwang Guang-ho. Now the doc has removed all the secrets. In the evening, a guy comes back home. He witnesses a quarrel between the hostess and apparently her husband. She understands that the guest heard everything. In order for Sigma to forget what he shouldn't have heard, she changes the topic. She asks how the first day of work went. They go to their rooms. The guy notices that Eva Elfie is not in the best condition, and by his deduction, he understands that something has happened to her. After some time, Dr. Strange takes a shower. The hostess hears this. Apparently, she wanted to get rid of poor health by some method. After the shower, the hero comes to his room, where he begins to rest fiercely after such a hard day. But then a knock is heard in the room. Apparently, everything will begin now. The hostess, whose name is Ajuma, comes into the room. This surprises Guanho. The lady brought food to satisfy herself. She wanted to eat together. The hero did not understand all the hints. He agreed to eat the food, not understanding what would happen after because he had never been in such harsh conditions. They sit alone in the room. The woman offers the guest a certain drink, which, in theory, should help restore strength after such a hard day. The guy drinks it all in one gulp, and the lady kept waiting for him to pour her this drink too, and he was very surprised by this. The doctor just now noticed that she was ready to play with the curling iron. He had not noticed this before because of his enormous hunger. The atmosphere became more tense. It became hotter and hotter. The boy began to feel dizzy. Then the hostess took out a first aid kit and began to treat Strange. From below, there were magnificent views of the landscape that had always driven him crazy, but now he could enjoy it completely. She noticed the barrel that was sticking out. She wanted to look at the gun. Because of this, she began to take it out. But the guy didn't want her to do it. But then the soldier himself went out into the street. She was very surprised by this, and also surprised by the unprecedented size of the deagle. The caliber was also not small. The hostess suggested continuing the meal. Next in line was a chicken breast, which the hostess had kept in her refrigerator for a long time. The soldier fired. It was clearly visible and audible. The hostess immediately began to look at the results of the shot, which was fired by a deagle. After that, the hostess took off her outerwear, because the room became very hot. Just like in a bathhouse, Strange's brain turned off. He could not think normally. They began to exchange contacts. From that moment on, the doc could not think. He relied only on feelings, desires, sensations. The lady wanted to take it to the next level. She began to wash the barrel as it was contaminated with gunpowder, which had settled on the weapon. After some time, they moved to a new final stage. The lady became a cowgirl. She loved horse racing. She already had experience in it. But the hero didn't want to watch this. He suggested changing the game. She agreed. Then the guy took everything into his own hands and began to act. The process lasted longer than the first stage. The lady was happy about it. She forgot about the quarrel that happened to her earlier. She gave permission to shoot exactly at 10. The shooter listened to her and completed his task, which was set by the general. When the boy woke up, he was lying in bed alone and understood that the atmosphere would be extremely awkward after what happened at night. Doc went down from his room to the first floor and went into the kitchen. He noticed the food that was on the table, and a note in which it was written that the hero should forget what happened at night. After that, he doesn't know what to do because from now on, he won't even be able to look his mistress in the eyes, and he still has a whole year to live here. From that moment on, it was extremely awkward for the two of them to be around each other, much less start talking. But one thing did not change. The food was still excellent. The guy didn't understand why she did it that day, but he guessed that she was just lonely. Because of this, she filled this void. Guangho was back at his job. He was again taking samples from people for the presence of coronavirus, but he was very ill, so he was sent home early. He walked home. He wanted to go back to Seoul, but then he again notices the lady diver. He sees that she is still limping. The doctor began to call her, but she again did not hear anything. She went into a secluded place and began to take off her outer clothing without noticing the hero. But after a few seconds, she turns to the side and sees him. She is very surprised and begins to scream in surprise. She begins to ask the uninvited why he appeared so suddenly. He replied that he was a knight who wanted to help her. He decided to run away from the crime scene, but the lady asked him to stop, but the boy did not listen to her, but simply ran out into the street. After which, Strange turned on the 100th LVL stealth and hid behind a pillar. After which he began to think why the lady began to change clothes, but he saw that this was a locker room. The hero realized that he had done something dirty that he should not have done. He was afraid that rumors would spread too quickly. But no matter how much he condemned himself, he could not forget what he saw in this building. With his memory, he remembered all the characteristics of Haeyeon's appearance. He didn't understand what was happening to him. He stood up and decided to wet his feet. Maybe it would help him. And he also hoped that the year would pass quickly. Afterwards, we see Guangho swimming in the sea, and with him a lady diver who swam very gracefully and quickly, like a mermaid that the hero could not catch up with. But it turns out it was just a dream that was as sweet as pie. The guy woke up because of a call that came from his phone. He picks up the phone. His friend called him, who was interested in whether he was okay because she found out that he was released early. The hero is surprised that she called only to find out her friend's condition, so he wanted to treat her to food. At this time, the mermaid swam in the water and looked for beautiful shells, after which she dragged them to the shore. The old women were pleased with her work. Afterwards, the grandmother let slip that the doctor exchanged contact information with her when she was unconscious. This confuses the lady. The grandmothers insult her, and the lady runs away from this place. Apparently, she is very vulnerable. The entire squad of divers went to the village. After that, she doesn't understand how to look the doc in the eye. She walks down the street past that same hero who is stuck on his phone. They pass each other. After a few seconds, Barbie notices Dr. Strange. This confused her. The hero asks her to stay. He wanted to explain his possible strange behavior, but the lady began to understand everything wrong and began to run away from him. They ran, but along the way they almost met two old women. The lady would like not to show herself to them and led the guy with her into a dark corner. She leaned him against the wall and asked him to be quiet. The boy didn't understand what had suddenly happened, but he listened to advice from the girl who was standing very close. The diver kept peeking around the corner. She watched the grandmothers who were slowly walking down the street, and at that time the soldier woke up and stood in a fighting stance. She noticed that some snake had touched her. Strange was frightened by this and asked to quickly get out of here and go to another place. As soon as the lady began to walk, she twisted her ankle. The knight noticed this and offered to carry her on his back to her home. She climbed onto the horse, which carried her to the house, which was not so far away. Along the way, they exchanged several compliments. After some time, they finally reached the desired house. The hero is surprised by its beauty and well-groomed appearance, because it was really cozy. She, her mother, and grandmother usually live in this house, but now her grandmother is in the hospital and her mother is looking after her, so she is alone at home. He asks her to lift her sore leg in order to bandage it. This was strange, because he had an elastic bandage in his pocket. A few seconds later, the doctor asks the client why she was running away from him. She says that she was embarrassed by the exchange of contacts on the shore. Then the hero realized that he was the first to do this to her, but then it began to rain suddenly, and the guy, of course, did not take an umbrella. The girl tells a story about Fox Rain. The boy is surprised at the lady's knowledge, but she says that she knows a lot about him. Guanho began to lose control. He kept getting closer and closer to her. He wanted to feel those same sensations again. But then a lady bursts in, apparently Haeyeon's mother. She came at the most inopportune timing. She brought a container for food. Suddenly she sees a guest who was the doc. They see each other and are very surprised by this, but the lady stood and did not understand what was happening. They explained to the turtleneck that the doctor was renting accommodation in a boarding house from a woman. They went to the house. The boy did not even say goodbye to his friend. Ajuma wonders how the guest knows Hyun. He said that he bumps into her from time to time. She asks to talk to him. The conversation was not easy because it was the first time they started talking since the night they reinstalled Windows. It embarrassed the guy. The woman says that she was under the influence of debuffs, and also her husband left without saying anything. This enraged her, and then she committed a crime. But the hero says that he felt good at that moment, so the hostess had to stop blaming herself. Then she instantly calmed down. Doc began to step back, but tripped over a stone, which caused him to fall to the ground, but it was soft after the rain. Then she got down to business. She took off her outer clothes. There was fog after the rain. It was very stuffy. Guanho did not expect this. He didn't want to do it right in such a place, because he was afraid of rumors that spread faster than the speed of light. But the woman asked him to be quieter. She found a pistol, began to eat ice cream. She was a master of her craft. This made the guest very happy, who was enjoying what was happening. The hero saw a donut, and at that moment he was very hungry, so he asked to eat it. The lady allowed it. Afterwards, the hero thrust the sword into the sheath. It was wonderful. The woman did not stop sharpening it. She noticed that the boy was getting a taste for it. The hero loved sharpening, as if he had chosen the wrong profession. He should have been a craftsman, not a doctor. They changed their position, and the guy stuck his katana, drove the BMW inside the tunnel, in which he began to drift. At that moment, he held on longer than before. The guys began to speed up, because perhaps they would be seen. The hero was showing his skills that he acquired during his arrival. At this time, Hyun is at home. She noticed that the guy left his bandage at her house, with which he bandaged her wound. She decided to take it back to the owner. She understood that they had not gone that far. She was walking along the road but did not find anyone. The girl was tired. She already wanted to take it to the guy's place of work, but she heard strange sounds coming from the side. She goes in this direction, and in the bushes the guys are sharpening a blade. They didn't want to show it because people might be scared by it. The guys should have hidden, but the woman wanted to finish the job, so there was no stopping. The girl diver almost saw them, but they called her on the phone. Apparently it was the grandmothers who invited her to lunch. She agreed and left the forest. The doctor completed the course of treatment, and the hostess seemed to have lost the battle and fell to the ground. Then the hero wanted to continue the battle. He became too confident. He didn't look like his former self. He helped hide the gun. This surprised the lady. The boy went into battle again. He was a real samurai. He had only a path, no goal, a brave warrior, a true patriot of the country. But the second fight was not particularly long. This was obvious because after a long first fight, there cannot be a long second fight. After that, the two of them fell to the ground. It was hard. They did not expect such moves from each other, but nevertheless, the katana was sharpened perfectly. The next morning, the doc wakes up in excellent condition. He's very happy that everything has worked out in his life because previously he was withdrawn. He put the phone on the bed and went downstairs. At this time, a new resident arrived at the boarding house. She was a lady who, apparently, had walked for a long time to this place. She enters the house but doesn't see anyone. She thought that there was no one here. Then she began to take off her outerwear since it was very hot outside. Here the guys catch the timing. The girl goes up the stairs and the guy goes down it. They collide with each other. He exposed everything that he shouldn't have seen. This really confuses the hero, but this doesn't bother the new one. Apparently she wasn't one of those who was afraid of this. But no, she simply forgot that she was in a different appearance. So the doc went knocked down the stairs, and at that time the hostess came in. She is surprised at what happened in her house. It turns out it was her sister, the eldest, who came to this house. Afterwards, the woman apologizes to the doctor, asks him if he is okay, and he answers the question positively. Then the dark-haired girl asks her sister to apologize in the same way, but she does not want to apologize because the boy himself ran up the stairs. It turns out her name is Songjin. She is a primary school teacher. No matter how much Doc didn't want to stay at home, he had to go to work. After he leaves, the older one asks what kind of person this guy is. The younger one says that he is a new doctor who works at the health center. The teacher thinks that she can get along with him, even after they met each other in such a strange way. At work, he tells a story about the owner's sister to his friend, who listened to the storyteller very carefully. He complained that she spoke in an extremely unusual tone. She's a teacher, so the guy sometimes gets the feeling that he is a student. Sometimes she asked for very strange services. For example, when he returned after work, she asked for a massage. But the redhead began to ask more and more questions that the hero did not want to answer. He asked to quickly finish work and go home. The lady recalled that they were having dinner with colleagues in the evening. After some time, the guys left the bar where they had hung out earlier. The red-haired friend says that she will take her colleague home solo because she is confident in her abilities, and sends the hero himself home because he is also under debuffs. The guy walks home alone. He notices very beautiful views on the shore. The atmosphere is just like in GTA Vice City. 4 glasses maximum for the guy. The doctor is thinking strange thoughts to himself. He wants to return to Seoul again, but after that he wanted to swim, because he had not swam in the sea for a long time because of the virus. He felt very good. He had not relaxed so much for a long time. While he was resting and swimming, a blue-eyed girl was running on the shore. She notices a doc who was relaxing at sea. This surprised her. She ran after the guy in his clothes. She began to ask what happened to him. The lady saw that a large wave was gathering behind the guy. She began to protect him with her body. She squeezed him so that he would protect himself. Afterwards, we see the guys lying on the shore. Apparently, they were washed away by the wave from which the hero was protected by the lady. If not for her, he would have fed the fish at the bottom. Since things are very wet, the lady invites the guy to her home because he's not so far away, and in this form, it is better for the doctor not to walk down the street. Afterwards, they are already in Haeyeon's house. It's dark outside. The hostess herself is taking a shower, and Gwanho is waiting for her in another room. He is surprised at the cleanliness of the house, but then a lady suddenly comes out. She asks if the new t-shirt fits the Sigma. He says that it fits. The guy begins to look at photographs of the girl. They were taken while she was in high school and university. We learn that Grandma Haeyeon was also a diver. She was the leader of the department. She is an incredible master in this field. The blue-eyed girl dreams of becoming just like her grandmother, a pro, so she has an aspiration. The hero supports her with words. Because of this, the lady thanked him with a certain move. She stood on her toes to reach and began to whisper spells. The boy began to help her. He picked her up and dragged her somewhere, and she was ticklish because of the muzzle, which tickled her. The hero noticed the pumping of her muscles. The doctor offered to study human anatomy. The student agreed. She unsheathed the avik. She had never seen it before. He could not restrain himself. He began to repeat what he had done only a moment ago. The lady experienced new sensations. The hero began to eat chicken breast. The girl liked that the food was tasty. She wanted to continue the game. She began to ask the doc for advice because he was more professional than her. He said that he would do everything himself. The main thing is that the diver should not worry. He stretched out the slingshot and began to show magic, or rather sleight of hand. No tricks or anything. The lady was very good. The guy was about to enter the tunnel. Hyo-yeon was worried about this because this was the first train journey. She did not know what would happen in the future. He began to hit the nail with a hammer, which kept triggering the guy, but now he is hammering on it so the goal is achieved. While the guys were having a fierce party, the lady spilled a lot of juice, which made her feel ashamed, because of her carelessness, she stained the blanket. They changed their firing position. The boy began to praise the blue-eyed girl. She was very happy about this because she was truly praised. He upgraded his agility to LVL 69. It was excellent. He went on a rampage, made a rampage, and drove a car very far. The lady thought that she wanted to go to the toilet, but the fight had to be played out to the end. And yet it only seemed to her the doctor knew this. He did not fall for the trick. No one could hold back anymore. Everyone was tired. The battle had to be completed. Otherwise, there would have been no winner, but still the game ended in a draw. They exchanged shots, so the round ended in a draw. The doc hit him right in the head, and the lady hit the hero in the belly. Gwanho immediately began to wipe away the marks of the battle on her face. But she asks him to stop. She cleans the room herself. The guest began to think that he had somehow offended the lady and left the house, and the lady began to think about everything. After a couple of days, the clothes that the lady gave dried up. The boy wanted to return them and went to Haeyeon's house, but found no one there. But then an old woman suddenly appears. At first, she didn't understand who came to visit Haeyeon, but she immediately recognizes the doc. It turns out that the girl had gone somewhere. Then the main character wanted to leave, but he was stopped by an old woman who gave her the owner's number. After Gwanho walks down the street, he looks at the phone and thinks about the lady, namely about her phone. But while he was looking at the phone, Haeyeon saw him. She didn't want to see him yet because yesterday, when they reinstalled Windows on her PC, she decided to hide behind a pillar. After her hide and seek, the hero calls her on the phone, so the ringing sound was made and the boy found her in a strange place. He says that it is he who is calling her. He talks about how he went to her house to give her clothes, and later he only met an old woman who gave him her number. The lady asks to forget what happened between them recently, or rather about the incident that surprised the guest of these parts, and the lady quickly leaves. To forget all this, he decides to go for a run in the evening, look at beautiful places, and so on. But then he hears sounds. It turns out their source was Songjin and some guy who pestered her with his requests. The woman began to run away from this guy in the middle, but he grabbed her hand and didn't let go. He offered her some elixirs to drink. But a doctor bursts into this party, releases the lady from her stupor and begins to interrogate the drunk who behaved like a redneck. Gassinter from Grove Street says that right now the main character is ruining the formation of new love in this huge world. He let go of the poor fellow and began to take his friend away, but then a man attacks them from behind, but the guys managed to dodge. They decided to go home. On the way, the hero asks why she returned back to the hut so late. She answered that she had an office party. The teacher noted that the hero looked super cool and brutal, that she would play with him with a curling iron and more. The guys enter the house. They see that the hostess is sleeping. Then they decide to go straight upstairs so as not to wake her up, after which they begin to chill fiercely. While they were sitting on the sofa, the doctor began to ask the eldest for advice because she was a lady and probably knew the problem of the relationship between him and Hee-yeon. He began to tell the story. Song-yeon said that there was nothing to do in such a situation because time cannot be rewinded back. Then the woman began to calm Strange, who kept thinking and thinking about that day. He could not forget it. She decided to help the boy forget this. She began to massage the doctor's sore spot with her feet. He was surprised by this. She was really ready for this. Her gaze was sharp, piercing everyone's heart, but she continued the massage. A few seconds later, the first shot was fired, which meant only one thing. The shooter was pleasantly surprised by the process. They moved to a new stage of evolution. They began to solve problems the way adults do. They had to shoot at least a second time. The teacher began to teach the student the basics of this life. Apparently in her soul, she was a sage who knew every secret of this world. They began to fight. The lady was like a river that flowed very quickly and violently along its course, and the lady wanted the cannon to fire exactly 90 degrees. She really liked this feeling. The guys began to sharpen their knife. The girl had not changed windows with someone like him for a long time. The process accelerated. The forward movements became harsher. The lady was ready to melt with joy. The guy asked to be quieter. The girl listened to the advice from her student. He thrust the katana very hard. This surprised the woman very much, but she had to remain silent. Sonyeon understood that she would soon give up, because it was difficult for her to continue the fight. She could not control herself. But suddenly the hostess wakes up and asks why there is so much noise in the house. This tensed the guys. They were scared by it, but continued. The hero also fired a shotgun, but even after the second shot, he was cheerful, which greatly surprised the teacher. After such a long fight, the lady could not show her true colors. She was very pleased with this evening. She didn't understand what was happening to her because previously she commanded everyone, but now everything is different. The boy gives the orders. The hero wanted to check something, namely whether he had a third shot in the magazine. This was surprising and very strange. Then he changed the target of the shot. Now he was aiming at a higher target. He forced the lady to help him aim at it.